Health is Wealth with Dr. Mike is brought to you by Pizzaville. You can still enjoy your favorite pizza and follow a plant-based diet with Pizzaville's new vegan, dairy-free mozzarella cheese. Plant-based, soybean-free, nut-free, gluten-free, and casein-free. Substitute on any pizza at no additional charge. Health is Wealth with Dr. Mike on 1059 The Region.
You're listening to 1059 The Region, and this is Health is Wealth with Dr. Mike Carrozza. I'm station manager Tina Cortez. Good morning, Dr. Mike.
Good morning, Tina. How you been?
I'm good, thank you. And how are you doing?
We're doing quite well. Thankfully, we're about 6 plus weeks in, and the schools, I think, are holding it down. I think the most important part, obviously we're in this stage 2, right, Tina?
Absolutely, stage 2. And it seems like, and give me your take on this, that there is a great deal of COVID fatigue out there, that there is a group that is not getting the message about wearing the mask, washing your hands, and being physically and socially distant, right?
Yes, you do stand correct, and I believe that there are, this is more what we've seen from some of the data is it's definitely the younger generation that have been doing this and practicing this way. But I think it's important to understand that, this is a community approach, and I think we all have to do our part. And so as long as we do, we can protect everybody. And one of the most important things is that people think that they're wearing a mask for them. Especially if we talk about the younger individuals, it's not for them per se. So the masks are being worn, especially in the younger, because we know that we know the majority of studies that have come out showing that younger generations are somewhat not as at risk of death as the elderly population. So it's the younger individuals that if they actually wear the mask, they're protecting the elderly. So if they live with their grandparents, if they see their elderly parents, if you will, or their grandparents, this is something that can protect them and those, above 60-year-old or 70-year-old immunocompromised people. And so sometimes we have to think about, why am I wearing a mask? Mm-hmm. And am I wearing a mask because of me? Or am I wearing a mask because I need to protect? So now, if you're an elderly person, it's a two-way situation. But when you're a younger person and you probably think you're invincible because you've read some of the studies and you know that pretty much this illness is just going to be something like the flu and you're good, you'll fend it off quite easily. You got to think about spreading it. And I think that's the most important part.
Before we get into some of the data that you want to share, what about those who are elderly, those who are immune compromised, who come into AppleMed? What are you hearing from them? How are they feeling? And how are you treating them?
Well, first, I think you have to look at the entire picture of the individual. So I'm very happy to be in practice and practicing, alive. And I think one of my patients who came in, my elderly patients came in and says, "You're one of the only doctors that I know that are seeing patients live." Now, we are doing everything we can to make this possible and successful, and that's inclusive of putting up barriers, wearing face masks and sanitizing, and continually screening our patients coming into the office, and then eliminating things like our waiting room. And so these are things that we've tried to keep in, and thus far they've worked, thank goodness. But, for the elderly patients that are coming in, it's quite simple. We have to make sure that their vitamin supplementation is optimal. And so sometimes it's routine blood work and just making sure things like their vitamin D is in check, and they're taking things like zinc and a wonderful multivitamin. But most importantly is that their nutrition, as the elderly patients, the hunger starts going away and you don't really feel hungry. And especially if you're alone, and to some of my elderly patients that live alone, they really don't like to cook too often, because then there's a bunch of leftovers, and then there's a lot of food that gets thrown away. But most importantly is we need the nutrition. So we want to try to make these individuals eat healthier. So like lots of fruits and vegetables. And although some of these elderly patients that live alone or by themselves, they don't want to do a big shop, so they won't buy a lot of fruits and vegetables that are going to waste. So my advice to those individuals are really just, obviously you don't have to buy, 5 pints of blueberries, and then the other thing is they don't want to go to the grocery store that many times to sort of be at risk and come in contact. So, so it's pretty much a double-edged sword here, but most importantly is they have to eat well, and they need the basic nutrition for their immune system. And when I talk about basic nutrition, I'm talking about proteins, proper carbohydrates that are not going to be simple sugars. And then, when you talk about green leafy vegetables that have the majority of the nutrients and vitamins that are going to be good for their bones. And then, whatever's missing, we do some blood work, and we, for sure, vitamin D is always on my list to look at for these elderly patients because they're most likely deficient. And then we want to make sure that level is optimal amongst their other vitamins that they need to be taking. And then based on that, hopefully we can get them into a nice healthy routine, and that'll keep them healthier, and especially during this cold and flu season.
You brought up a really good point, and I know you're speaking specifically of the elderly, but I think it applies to so many of us that you're actually seeing patients in person. And I think that one-on-one connection, and I know we talk about, yes, we can connect virtually, absolutely, we can connect over the phone, but to connect in person, it really must carry a lot of weight with your patients.
Absolutely, Tina, because you need to physically see, in medicine, you need to physically see your patient. And sometimes when it's I'm seeing a lot of mental, emotional, obviously, it's on an all-time high, so I'm seeing a lot of this in practice. And so when you're talking to somebody on the phone, or you're even seeing somebody on a Zoom call, it's really challenging to understand what they're going through, and to experience what they're experiencing when they're going through their anxious states. And then not only that, you want to make sure you look at the most important things, like their vitals. What are their vitals doing? How's their blood pressure? You can't measure this on a telephone. And then, of course, if it's somebody who's, trying to control their weight because they know that being obese and having diabetes is a risk factor going into this winter, especially with COVID or even the flu or any other illness, this is where you want to look at the biomarkers like their weight and making sure that their weight is in check, their blood glucose is in check, and this becomes challenging to just do over the phone. So you made a good point.
Now, you also want to talk about some of the data that you've seen. You talk about on this show that you are a scientist by trade. So what is the data showing you at this point in this pandemic?
Look, we know that we have a virus. It's around us. We know that we now know that the coronavirus has been around us for a long time, actually, because there are people that are not affected by this virus. There are people that, don't show any symptoms, which means that evolution has taken place, and this virus looks like it's been around. Now, how long it's been around, it's hard to tell, but there are people that are asymptomatic, we call in medicine, and asymptomatic means they have no symptoms, they don't have any fever, but they test positive. And what that means is they have a little bit of the virus in their DNA particles, because when you do the PCR testing, which is polymerase chain reaction, these are the DNA fragmentation, they look to see if this virus has been in some of the population, some of the human population, which currently is in our community, and they find that these people have been exposed somehow, some way to this virus, but they don't respond, meaning that they're asymptomatic, but they can still shed the virus, so they can still spread it. So this is the concern, and understanding what's happening, and it becomes challenging because these individuals, they don't know they have it. And then they can easily spread it. So this is why we say, the younger people, wearing the mask sometimes is just not to protect you from getting it, but you may already have it, and you may be spreading it, but you may not even know. And it doesn't even come on with a stuffy nose. And so what the data is presenting itself is saying that, we have some asymptomatic people in our community, and then B, we know that this is not affecting the younger population, and so this is something that's affecting elderly and immunocompromised people. So I'm not saying that we have to be very careful. So like the elderly's have to be extremely careful, and the immunocompromised got to be extremely careful, but the younger generation, I don't want them to feel like they're invincible either, because and if you look at the numbers, they're the contributing factor to why the numbers have been so steadily increasing.
So true, Dr. Mike. Let's everybody do what we can to help them protect each other. After the break, Dr. Mike takes us inside Sonicore. This is Health is Wealth on 105.9 The Region. Stay with us.
Have a question for Dr. Mike? Call us at 416-335-1059. Tweet us at 1059 The Region, or email us at info@1059theregion.com. More with Dr. Mike and Health is Wealth when we come back.
It was a rainy day when Pizzaville realised that some big pizza conglomerates want to make the cheapest pizza. Some want to be the fastest. At Pizzaville, we want to make the best pizza, stone-baked, the traditional Italian way. It's what we strive for every day, to be the best, not the fastest or the cheapest. Oh, cue the announcer.
Pizzaville Stone-Baked Pizza. Fiercely Canadian. Authentically Italian.
Health is Wealth is back with Dr. Mike on 105.9 The Region.
You're listening to 105.9 The Region, and welcome back to Health is Wealth. I'm Tina Cortez, and over to Dr. Mike with today's roundtable.
Thank you, Tina. Okay, so joining us on Health is Wealth is we have obviously someone from Sonicore. She's a health and detoxification specialist. Her name is Anna Maria Vetta. So thank you for joining us, Anna Maria.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
So we're going to talk a little bit about, I've also brought an expert, Dr. Ryan Shakitano, ApoMed's very own. He's a sports medicine expert as well. We're going to talk a little bit about rehabilitation and how saunas are going to help with that. So thank you, Dr. Ryan, for joining.
Yeah, hi, everyone. Nice to be back on the show.
So first off, Anna Maria, thank you again for coming on the show. Can you just speak a little bit about Sonicore and how it all started?
Yes, absolutely. So Sonicore started in the early 1980s. We started out in Woodbridge, Ontario, actually in the home garage. And my father started out the company. And, years passed by, and we had a showroom base in Woodbridge. And we primarily started out by manufacturing the sauna heater. And that's the reason and where the word Sonicore came from. The core of a sauna is the heater source. And after many years of being successful in that area, we came out to manufacturing the actual saunas. So we started out in the early 80s in Woodbridge and continuously growing with high quality and demand. And now we are in Bolton, Ontario, and continuing to manufacture for local and the world.
Wow, that's amazing.
Thank you. It's quite an honor to know that we also still own the same home that we started. So we definitely keep to our roots.
Wow, it's really interesting. I mean, York Region's own, we can say it. Right in our backyard, we have one of the best sauna manufacturers literally in the country. And, I want to just talk a little bit about background. And just for our listeners, saunas have been around for about 2,000 years. And basically, the heat sources were initially obviously from stone, and it started from fire, and these were just pretty much holes in the walls or in caves, if you will. But nowadays, we use the heat source, I guess the infrared heat source, and which is more efficient. And this kind of heat source is usually ideal. Can you just speak the point about that, Anna Maria?
Yeah, absolutely, Dr. Mike. You're absolutely correct. So years ago, originating with, as you mentioned, a hole in the ground or in the wall with wood burning, then they derived into electric or gas or propane heater. But now we are looking at infrared. And infrared is a completely different ballpark of saunas. I actually like to call them infrared therapy rooms. because infrared saunas are much more enjoyable, comfortable temperatures, energy efficient. Primarily, they can be plugged anywhere in the home, so very convenient. Bedroom, basement, bathroom. They don't need a lot of space, so condo living is fantastic for infrared. And infrared now gets to the concept of heating the body, so not necessarily the room. And we're going to start reaping the benefits with a direct penetration to the body, which is a huge benefit as well for people that are intolerant to extreme heat. They can now have a source of sauna to detox at a comfortable temperature.
And I think that's important. I'm a huge proponent of sauna therapy, of course, for many aspects, and I'll speak to the point of that coming up. But I guess, for our listeners out there, when I was growing up and somebody had a sauna, they were quite wealthy. It was like, they had that little sauna, they had that little room next to their cantina, and it was like there was a sauna, and we're like, wow. And it was just like it was looked upon as being something a little bit more fancy, right?
Yeah, almost like a luxury item.
Yeah, a luxury item. Exactly. Nowadays, with this new improved technology, of course, I guess it's more efficient, and pretty much anybody can get it, and it doesn't have to be so luxurious, correct?
Absolutely. Saunas, again, that mindset over the years has been, large saunas, entertaining saunas, high price point items, which still exist, of course, but there's cost-effective and price attractive saunas, right? You can invest in wealth for minimal and have a unit directly in your home, which is one of the greatest benefits, especially in today's times as well.
Yeah, wonderful. So first off, let's talk about how saunas will improve the overall health and wellness of our listeners. So first off, you get the heat from the sauna will relax the body's musculature, and this will improve circulation. And for the thousands of years that this has been around, this is really the data. Now, it started with the Finnish population, so in Finland, and it's so interesting because I've met quite a few Finnish people, and they're wonderful human beings. I mean, and they always say if you meet somebody from Finland and they invite you to their sauna, it's like a huge compliment. So it's almost like their social comfort level. This is something that they've been doing for again hundreds of thousands of years. So I mean, besides improving circulation and stimulates the release of things that's called endorphins. Now, endorphins are these all-natural feel-good chemicals in the body, and so this is what releases. So this is how, when we're dealing with especially troubling times like this, we need more of these endorphins to get released in our life. Instead of the stress hormone endorphins like cortisol, we need like this more rest and digest sort of these hormones to get synthesized in the body so we feel good. And this is going to be promoting that wonderful feeling. And I sort of love that on how it aspects of that. But in terms of sauna aid and recovery for intense physical activity, I brought in Dr. Ryan Shakitano, who's a sports medicine expert. And I just want to shine some light on, the body's natural healing process. And when obviously, Dr. Ryan, you've played in a professional setting, as being a professional soccer player. You put your body through, a lot of trauma. And how can you talk to point about how physical sports and sauna therapy has helped you in your career and other athletes?
Great question. I sort of adopted a model when I was playing, towards the later days when I was playing, that your body does not build muscle in the gym or on the court or on the field or whatever your playing surface is. It breaks it down. And it's what you do after that helps it build back up and come back stronger. And I found sauna was such a great way to help facilitate that process, in addition to obviously some of the things we talk about and we discussed on your show as well, in terms of healthy protein and good sleep and all the nutritional side of things that we've discussed. But sauna really does help. And when I was at the University of Toronto, was when I first introduced myself to it. I had some teammates doing it. It was just a little bit of hearsay. I feel better after. So I was like, okay, I'll give this a go. And it took some time to build up to it. But once I did, I noticed like just extreme relaxation after the most intensive workouts. And I was able to perform at a higher level quicker in terms of my recovery. So my soreness after workouts wasn't too long, and my mental clarity, my mental focus was even better. So there were all these little benefits, and all I literally needed to do was sit there and enjoy the heat. So I was a big fan of it, a big proponent of it, and it became a regular part of my regimen when I was playing high-level soccer.
And we often prescribe this to our patients in practice, right, Dr. Ryan? I mean, it's just something that we promote. I mean, I think importantly enough, after participating in sort of physical sports, a lot of for our listeners out there, the heat actually will help promote the muscle relaxation, as we mentioned. But it's this flow, right? It's this flow of blood that will get to the areas it needs to sort of promote healing. And I think that's the most important aspect. And then the elimination of lactic acid and the other toxins that build up that actually can hinder the musculature. I think that's another powerful point that the sauna therapy is important on.
Definitely, and it's so good at doing that it actually acts as a way that the body is doing physical activity. So there's research showing that cyclists and runners actually improve their cardiovascular capacity when they do saunas regularly. So in terms of being able to flush out those toxins and increase circulation and blood flow and all those things you mentioned are all fantastic benefits that come from using sauna on a regular basis.
Yeah, and you brought up the point, and I'm grateful you did, and we didn't mention this yet, but the detoxification components of sauna therapy are unprecedented, especially when it comes to the studies. And Anna Maria will have you speak to this point in a moment because you're more of an expert on this. But the deep sweating, this is where it's the difference between just sweating because you're hot, but as the heat actually begins to move to the skin surface, this is where the nervous system sends a signal. And, the sweat glands get stimulated and they produce sweat. I mean, the sweat production is predominantly composed of about, obviously, 99% water. But when you deep sweat in a sauna, this is where you can help reduce levels of lead, mercury, nickel, and some PCBs. And we'll talk about the PCBs because that's where, for our listeners out there, you're getting this, but you have no clue where or how. I'll talk the point on that. But Anna Maria, can you just shed some light on how, from our daily environment, we're all toxic, we're all getting toxicities. How important is, sauna therapy for detoxifying?
So, Dr. Mike, it's interesting that you're asking me that because I get asked a lot of that from clients. And one thing I can say is, 20, 30, 40 years ago, there was manual labor. Right? It was almost a daily thing. You walked to the store, you had a manual laboring job, where nowadays we just need more so to detox because we're not getting that manual or daily activity that our bodies need to detox. So even more so we need to get into a sauna to reap the benefits. And with the deep sweating, that's really what triggers to release all of our toxins of nickel, mercury, chemical exposure. I mean, nowadays, it's so imperative that we increase our core temperature, not only to detox what's within us, but also to boost our immune system for possible future toxins we're going to be exposed to, right? So that's the all-around of why it's so important to use saunas on a daily.
Well, great information, Anna Maria, and also Dr. Ryan. Before we end our session, first off, Anna Maria, can you join us next week?
Yes, absolutely. I'd love to.
Yeah, because I think we need to talk more about this, and it'll help our listeners. But before we end our session, where can listeners learn more about Sonicore?
Absolutely. They can visit us on our website, www.sonicore.com, or you can visit us at our showroom in Bolton and also call us at 905-857-8085, and we look forward to answering any of your questions.
Wonderful. And just a reminder to our listeners, the diet and lifestyle changes we discussed today should be reviewed with your own doctor. Obviously, our discussions are not the opinion of the station, but their opinion are based on evidence that we've looked at. But you should definitely review anything that we mentioned with your own doctor, and this would probably be the best bet. But just before we wrap up our show, I'd like to thank Dr. Ryan for joining us, and again, Anna Maria. And if you want to learn some more about our office, of course, Dr. Ryan and myself, we practice at AppleMed, and you can see us on Instagram, AppleMed Clinic, or you can reach us at 905-303 4622.
Previous episodes of Health is Wealth on 1059theregion.com. Thanks for listening.
Connect with us on Twitter at 1059theregion or call 416-335-1059 or email info@1059theregion.com. This is 1059 The Region. Health is Wealth is brought to you by AppleMed Clinic, located at 3560 Rutherford Road, Unit 45. AppleMed takes a results-driven approach to patient care. Remember, an AppleMed day keeps illness away.